I am Dr. Henri Colt, and this presentation is part of Bronchoscopy Academy, an ongoing competency-based curriculum in flexible bronchoscopy. The goal of this work is to improve procedural understanding, anatomical recognition, and clinical judgment, while helping reduce patient suffering associated with unequal expertise and inconsistent training. In this lecture, we will review normal anatomy of the trachea. The trachea is often described simply as a conduit between the larynx and the bronchi, but during bronchoscopy, the trachea becomes far more than a tube. It is a dynamic anatomical structure whose shape, caliber, flexibility, motion, and relationships provide essential diagnostic information. To the inexperienced observer, the trachea may initially appear repetitive and visually uniform. Yet, with careful study, subtle distinctions become meaningful. Small deviations in contour, movement, orientation, or anatomy may reveal underlying disease. Learning tracheal anatomy, therefore, means learning how to observe carefully. The trachea begins at the level of the cricoid cartilage and extends downward toward the carina, following the curvature of the spine and deviating slightly toward the right near the bifurcation. The subglottic region occupies only a short segment below the vocal cords, yet this area carries enormous clinical importance because narrowing or injury here can critically affect airflow. The cricoid cartilage itself forms the only complete cartilaginous ring within the airway. This anatomical detail becomes especially important during airway management, intubation, stenosis evaluation, and interventional procedures. Bronchoscopy teaches us that anatomy is never merely descriptive. Anatomy guides decision-making. Here we see an example of tracheal displacement caused by a goiter. This reminds us that airway anatomy is influenced not only by intrinsic airway disease, but also by surrounding structures within the neck and mediastinum. The trachea may be compressed, displaced, narrowed, distorted, or rotated by thyroid enlargement, tumors, vascular abnormalities, lymphadenopathy, or prior surgery. One of the important skills in bronchoscopy is recognizing when the airway is no longer occupying its expected anatomical position. Normal orientation becomes the reference point from which abnormalities are recognized. These slides review the dimensions and structural characteristics of the trachea. The adult trachea generally measures between 9 and 15 centimeters in length and contains approximately 18 to 22 cartilaginous rings. Its dimensions vary considerably between individuals and between sexes. The posterior membranous wall differs fundamentally from the cartilaginous anterior wall. Rather than rigid cartilage, the posterior membrane contains connective tissue, elastic fibers, glands, vessels, nerves, and the trachealis muscle. This membranous structure allows expansion of the esophagus during swallowing, while preserving airway flexibility during respiration. The trachea, therefore, represents a compromise between rigidity and motion. It must remain sufficiently stable to maintain airflow, yet flexible enough to accommodate respiration, swallowing, coughing, and changes in intrathoracic pressure. Bronchoscopy reveals these physiological principles directly through movement and anatomy. This educational review reinforces the approximate cross-sectional dimensions of the adult trachea. Measurements matter in bronchoscopy. A few millimeters of narrowing may dramatically alter airflow resistance, especially during exertion or respiratory distress. The bronchoscopist gradually learns to estimate airway caliber visually, while also understanding the limitations of visual estimation alone. Precisions matter because interventions, stent selection, dilation strategies, and procedural planning often depend upon accurate anatomical assessments. This slide returns our attention to the cricoid cartilage and its surrounding structures. The transition from larynx to trachea is not abrupt. Rather, it represents a carefully organized anatomical continuum. Understanding these transitions becomes important during difficult intubation, airway stenosis, tracheostomy, and interventional bronchoscopy. The airway, therefore, is experienced not as isolated compartments, but as connected territories. We now arrive at one of the most important landmarks in bronchoscopy, the carina. The carina is more than a bifurcation point. It serves as a major anatomical compass within the airway. Orientation here becomes critical. The right main bronchus typically appears more vertical, while the left main bronchus diverges at a greater angle. The bronchoscopist must develop an intuitive understanding of anterior and posterior orientation at the carina, because this affects navigation, lesion localization, and procedural accuracy. The widened carina shown here also demonstrates an important principle. Anatomy can reveal pathology indirectly. Subcarinal lymphadenopathy may distort or broaden the carinal angle before the lesion itself becomes visible endobronchially. Bronchoscopy often detects disease through altered anatomy rather than direct visualization alone. These slides review normal tracheal morphologies and variations. The trachea is not identical in every patient. Some individuals demonstrate C-shaped airways, others more U-shaped configurations, and some develop saber sheath morphology with sagittal widening and transverse narrowing. Dynamic changes also occur during respiration. Even normal airways narrow somewhat during exhalation because of posterior membrane motion. This is an important concept for trainees because dynamic movements should not automatically be mistaken for pathology. The airway is alive. It moves continuously. Only through repeated observation does one learn the difference between physiological motion and pathological collapse. These distinctions require experience, judgment, and pattern recognition. We now move from normal dynamics into pathological airway collapse. Tracheobronchomalacia reflects weakening of the cartilaginous airway framework, leading to excessive narrowing during exhalation. Excessive dynamic airway collapse, by contrast, also known as EDAC, primarily involves exaggerating bulging of the posterior membranous wall. These disorders may produce dyspnea, cough, secretion retention, wheezing, recurrent infection, and profound functional limitations. Importantly, these abnormalities are dynamic rather than static. They may appear subtle during quiet breathing and become dramatic only during forced exhalation or coughing. This is done during what is known as a dynamic bronchoscopy. We thus learn that we can watch airway function by performing bronchoscopy as an observation over time, not merely as an isolated inspection. We now turn toward fixed abnormalities of the trachea. Unlike dynamic collapse, fixed lesions maintain structural narrowing regardless of respiratory phase. These may result from tumors, extrinsic compression, post-intubation injury, prior tracheostomy, inflammation, fibrosis, or scar formation. The examples shown here demonstrate both simple web-like stenoses and more complex strictures involving distortion of the airway wall. The triangular stomal stricture seen after tracheostomy is a classic example of how medical intervention itself may permanently alter airway anatomy. Bronchoscopy repeatedly reminds us that the airway has a memory. Prior illness, prior procedures, prior survival, and prior injury all leave structural traces behind. These slides demonstrate the systematic measurement of airway abnormalities. Precise measurement is essential for communication, intervention planning, and longitudinal follow-up. We first determine the distance from the vocal cords to the lesion. Next, the length of the lesion itself is measured. Finally, we determine the distance from the distal extent of the abnormality to the carina. All three of these measurements should be provided to physicians interested in airway pathology. This process transforms bronchoscopy from subjective observation into reproducible anatomical documentation. The airway must therefore be described in a way that any other bronchoscopist or physician and nurse, and even family members, of course, can understand clearly and reconstruct the procedure mentally. That is one of the hallmarks of procedural maturity. Bronchoscopy Academy is part of an ongoing competency-based approach to bronchoscopy education. Our goal is to reduce patient suffering caused by unequal procedural expertise, inconsistent training, and preventable error. Additional educational resources, reflective essays, and narrated lectures are available at bronchoscopy.org and henricolt.substack.com.